Thank you for having me. Okay, so I guess I should just get into it. Well, everyone knows what a business is. Basically, the definition is commercial activity. So we're not talking personal activity. You buying gum at the store, whatnot, is not business, but buying and selling items. And one of the items, I guess, that we're going to be talking about is music. So, and how it works. So basically, let's see if I can, oops, I'm going too fast. I just put a little quote up here. Uh, an artist shouldn't have to worry about money matters. That's why we have business managers like me. So long story short, I've been doing this for quite a while. I started off as a musician, like everyone else, and decided, you know what, I want to know a little bit more about the money and how I'm going to make money. So I was touring, I was doing like a little guitar, a classical guitar ensemble in Toronto, and I wasn't getting paid, but my manager was getting paid and then paying me. So I wanted to know a little bit more about how that works. So he told me to go start taking some accounting courses. So that's what I did in university. And hence I loved it. I love Excel. I love spreadsheets. I love money. And so I just kept going. So I still work in the music industry, but I don't have to perform anymore. So basically, we're going to talk about business and the different types. I didn't write it out here. I want you guys to take some notes, but everyone knows what a sole proprietor is technically and what a corporation is. So these are the two entities of business that I deal with on a daily basis. So I'll just tell you the sole proprietor, that's a type of business structure in which an individual owns and operates the business. It's similar to like any other business, like a corporation and whatnot. The only difference really is that it's easier to set up. You have full control and decision making. There really is no corporate taxes, just personal taxes only on any profits. And it's simple and flexible and easy to do. The downsides is it's really hard to raise money, capital investment. There's limited growth potential because it's your tax return. So I wouldn't advise going on a tour and putting 100K down or 200K as your revenue. These are the types of things that you don't want to do. You want to go and do that within a corporation. And as well, like it's hard on debt and you could get into a lawsuit. You don't really need to go there right at the beginning with a sole proprietorship, but I highly recommend it so that you practice the accounting and just the day-to-day work that you need to do. So I would start there and then I would go to the next level, which is corporations. The corporation is a separate entity. I describe it like having another baby that eats, walks, talks, has its own tax return, and whatnot. Through that entity, you can own property and you can enter into contracts. And you can also sue and be sued in that corporation's name. So it is owned by shareholders. You would probably be the majority shareholder. And you work with a board of directors that would be elected to make some major decisions for the corp. So those would be your advisors. I always suggest you start with an advisor, board of directors, and then bring them on permanently and formally later. So the benefits of this one is definitely that you could raise a lot more capital. The taxes is separate. I think depending on your profits could be a little bit less. It really depends. There is something called double taxation. What that really means is you might need a corp in another place. So if you're operating in another country, you might need a corp over there. I'm not saying that you have to, but that is what a corporation's for. So you may have to pay taxes in that territory separate from yourself. And literally you'll have less control and decision making, but that's where someone like a manager or myself come in. It's easier for us to manage all of that. So without bothering you and going into your personal account and, you know, getting into your personal affairs. So this is where I come in, the role of business manager. So I'll just read here. Business manager handles the day-to-day operations of a musician's career, including managing their money, keeping track of their finances, and negotiating contracts, really to the point that a contract has clauses in it that talk about how you're going to get paid, when you're going to get paid, who you're going to get paid from. All of those wonderful things are in a contract. So I have to know how to read a contract and decipher them. And usually when I see a contract, I make a spreadsheet for it to kind of give you projections of what you're doing. But we'll get into that. So benefits of working with me or someone like me, other than your manager. So there's two people in a company. Usually it's the manager, who's kind of like your CEO. They're kind of like the forward facing, they represent the company. They're the ones that people know, they talk to. That's your manager. Then there's your business manager. I'm the accounting department. So I'm the lifeblood of your business. If you don't have that, you might not make it through. So that basically allows musicians to focus on their music without worrying about the business side of their careers. And it just ensures that the finances are managed properly and that people are getting paid. So I work hand in hand with the manager, but I don't always work with the manager. So for example, if the manager needs to get paid, they would invoice the artist. I would be the one paying them. Vice versa, there's royalties and whatnot. So we'll get into some of how that works. But right now, what I do on a daily basis, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I open probably a spreadsheet or whatnot and look at the budget and account for the actuals to the budget. Where are we today? Did we spend the money that we're supposed to? Are we on track? Do I have to go, basically bother the manager to say, you have to get on the road, you have to tour more, or we're making a whole bunch of money online, on the web. These are the things we're communicating about money all day long. So let's see, what did I say here? I work with Excel. That is a tool that, like I said, I love it, but I work with that daily. Google Sheets, very similar. I don't know if either is cheap these days. I think you have to pay for both in some way, shape, or form, but I use those on a daily basis. The other things you could use: Personal Capital, Intuit, Mint, QuickBooks. All of those things are really important. I personally like QuickBooks because it links to the banks, it links to your credit card. It's really easy to use. I invoice through it. They've added a new function with it, which is more around, let's see, if I'm invoicing, I can invoice now and not just accept and interact. I can accept Visa payments, go figure. So it's an amazing way to get your money in the account really fast. But one of the main things I love Excel for, and QuickBooks as well, because they go hand in hand, is creating budgets. There's a budget for every single, I guess, activity that an artist is doing, be it touring, selling merch, royalties, all of these things. We kind of create a budget of what comes in and what goes out. It's not just all what goes out all the time. Also for grants and stuff, that's important. So I highly recommend that you look at some of these things. If you're a sole proprietor, I would suggest the YNAB or the EverDollar. These are some programs that I use for the business planning aspect and to do some projections. I personally love the Live Plan, that I could put in numbers and columns, and then I could project like 3, 4, 8 months, 18 months out. It's really good for business planning, as well as the writing portion. They give you really nice samples to look at. So it kind of helps you write what you're wanting to do in your business, how you want to, who you need to hire next or whatnot. And it tracks all of that stuff. So that's important. So we start there with the budget, we start with the business plan, and then we move on to actuals. So managing income and expenses, that is the crux of the day-to-day. So I look at your bank accounts, your credit cards, other financial accounts, the savings, investments, stuff like that. But I am not a financial advisor. I'm not the one that you would be hiring to do your stock trading or whatnot. You need someone that specializes in that. But I do use, like I said, QuickBooks, Sage 50, Xero, I've used those in the past. Those are very higher level accounting. And I would suggest if you're dipping in for the first time, try QuickBooks. You could do a trial and it's a little bit cheaper. The other programs like even Simply Accounting, those are for like true accountants. You make a mistake, you cannot change it. So I would stay away from those for now until you're incorporated and you have someone like me, and then we can both set those up. There's also PayPal and Square. Those are, I think, mandatory these days. A lot more of my clients are making money outside of Canada. So because there's this really exchange rate and it's on the web, it's easy to use. So PayPal is easy to collect and whatnot. If you don't want to use QuickBooks and you just want to like get some foreign money in there, and Square, you could actually bring, I think it goes into your phone. You can bring a dongle. I'm not sure, while you're touring, and collect your money that way through the phone and whatnot through Square. So very good programs to use. And investment management. So business managers also help manage your investments. Basically what goes in and out if you wanted to do some trading, real estate, whatnot. But we do have to work hand in hand with insurance experts, real estate experts, and financial planners. But I'm kind of like the in-between. So I could discuss what needs to be done, but I wouldn't be implementing it without their expertise. So that what they use for that in Canada is Questrade and Wealthsimple. I honestly am really loving Wealthsimple right now. Like I put in a trade, or if I wanted to save into my RSPs, it could be automatic. It's just a really healthy way of looking at investments. In the past, it's not been so easy. So there's wonderful apps that come with these things. So I'm thinking they're probably the cheapest and the most efficient way to save money outside of your bank. Okay, and then there's the wonderful tax planning. So as everyone knows, the deadline was yesterday for individual tax returns. I want to make clear that when you're self-employed or like a sole proprietor or corporation, corporations have their own tax deadlines, depends on when you incorporate in the year or what you want your 12 months to be. So the end period could be September, October, November, December, any month you want. For sole proprietors, it's December 31st. And as well, if you're self-employed, like you all are as musicians and managers and whatnot, you would be filing, you'd have to file your tax by June 15th. If you're owing, you pay before then, you pay like yesterday. Otherwise, you'll be owing some penalties and interest. But usually my deadline is June 15th to file, and it gives us some time to really dive into the numbers. So once I get all the individuals off my plate, we look at, and doing your individual taxes, now we go and do the business side of the tax return. So that's what I also do. H&R Block is a place you can go. I don't believe they do business. I don't think they do. So, but they do personal tax returns. There is a section of your personal tax return where you would fill out your business expenses. It's called a T2125. You can find that in TurboTax, actually, if you have access to Intuit TurboTax. And that's really the categorizations that I use to fill out your expenses. So I would be using Excel to get that together, total them up, and stick them through that form. It's not as easy as I'm explaining, but there's a lot of things like you have to depreciate your assets. So if you have music equipment, there's going to be a depreciation calculation. You're going to need an accountant to help you with that. The program's not that easy to navigate in that area. If you want to write off your car, or you're buying a car or lease, again, that area is not that easy to manage, but all these things are in the personal tax return. And yeah, some tax planning. So, you know, we figure it out. At the beginning, you start solo as sole proprietorship with the personal tax return. And then as you grow, I recommend going corporate, and you do a corporate tax return, which is a T2. The personal tax is called a T1. So that's how I communicate with the other accountants and the managers. We call them T1s and T2s. Have you filled them out yet? Not T4s. That's what you collect as a slip that comes in with your revenue on it. I use those to put into the T1 or the T2 form. So the next slide, contracts. I have to look at your contracts. I'm not a lawyer, but these are important areas, like I said before, where it might say, when you're going to get paid. And, you might have signed a contract that says you get paid every year on December 31st. And that's when I have to go and collect. Other times it may say, okay, you're going to get a percentage of this, a percentage of that. All of those things I have to know so that I can track your expenses and revenues and what's going in and out of the business. So with the lawyers, we use DocuSign, Adobe Sign. There's something called Thomas Rucker's Westlaw Canada and LexisNexis. These are some legal online programs that I've used in the past to either decipher contracts or to read them or to write them. So my job is just to make sure you get compensated fairly. So that is what I use. And then as well, we need to protect your intellectual property. So those are your URLs and also possibly even your stage name. So we do copyrights and trademarks for those. To do a trademark, it's really not that difficult. Again, we would like to use a lawyer for that, but it is possible to, again, register your own URLs and whatnot. So those are the things I have to know about in business. Those are your assets. They actually don't depreciate in value. They may increase in value. So it's good to track those on something called a balance sheet. And, instead of just writing it off every year. And your copyright, well, you guys know what that is in terms of music. It's a little different. It's not straightforward like trademark, but these are the places that I would go to make sure that your intellectual property is secured and that I can track it. So it's CIPO, Canadian Intellectual Property Office, and the Intellectual Property Institute of Canada. They help a lot. And that said, building a brand. So once you have your intellectual property, you need to build a brand. And again, could be anybody on your team, hopefully a publicist, a marketing person that you've hired. Again, I would work with them and help them create their budgets and make the payments and stuff. But these are the tools that they use to help build your brand. Canva, Hootsuite, Adobe, Buffer, they're all great. They all cost a lot sometimes, depending on what you want to do. But again, these are all subscription-based applications. So they're definitely going to go through your budget, and you will at some point have to use them to update the marketing and whatnot and share your brand with your audience. So now we come to merchandise, another aspect of your brand. So we help with the calculations of the merchandise sales. And in that, I have to understand how you're creating and distributing the products. So, you might have somebody that's on the road that deals with the merch. Sometimes it's your tour manager at that point. They would be reporting to me. Weekly is usually the best bet. So after you've gone on the road for about a week, I'd like to see the numbers come in. We reconcile, pay out what's needed to be paid out, and pay your manager their percentage. You get your percentage put into the bank, and yeah, it can go on and on and on from there. So the places that I have to access a lot is Shopify, WooCommerce. There's also places like HubSpot and Pipedrive. These are all places to distribute your products. Other places obviously are for CDs and vinyl and whatnot. All of those things are your merchandise, and that is the heart of your business, usually outside of touring. And the third aspect of your business that I have to deal with are the royalties. So these are from streaming services, mainly radio, other sources. There's so many. I think I that's all I do sometimes is just look at all the data. There's more and more numbers than ever before. What I have to say about that is the numbers have gone from the whole number to I wouldn't say half numbers, but like part of a cent. So all of those add up to sometimes millions of dollars. So it's really important that you track your royalties. Now, but if you are self-managed and you're not signed, it's even more important that you track your royalties, because you need to pay out the people that you've worked with on those tracks. So again, I would come up with a system with you on how to track that. There's places called Royalty Share. I've used in the past. CD Baby, DistroKid is great, their back end, and the Royalty Zone. These are places that they basically enable me to stick in the numbers, kind of like share out the royalties so that we could pay the proper people, especially if you own your own publishing. That it's a whole other huge aspect of the business. You'll be losing money if you don't do it. And people like to work with people that make money. So it's best that you keep on top of the royalty management. And that is usually my area of specialties, and basically get to paying out your clients and who they owe in a timely manner so that you can make more music with them. And then there's just basic industry knowledge. I have to update myself on what's going on. So, the new laws and whatnot that are put in place. I read a lot from, these are the places I go: Canadian Musician, Nielsen. They've got some really good rates, like ratings and whatnot, that they present, statistics and whatnot that I kind of look to say, okay, how are we going to budget? How are we going to forecast your career? Exclaim magazine kind of keeps me up to date on what's going on, who's touring, what's going on in Canada, and SoCan, of course. So it's good to keep in contact and to read these publications, because they have some policies. And as you could see, I think they've just changed one with the Maple. So all of those things are really important to, I guess, understand, and how that's going to affect your business and how we're going to end up collecting money and paying out money. Okay. Oh, I'm going way too fast here. Oh, I think I'm done. In conclusion, I guess I get to conclude and we get to ask questions. A business manager plays a crucial role in helping musicians succeed in the music industry. We handle the business side of their careers, allowing them to focus on music and ensuring that their finances are being managed properly. And then that said, I'm kind of like the outsourced accounting department that you're going to need to thrive. So with that said, do you guys have any questions?
We do.
Andrea, yeah, I'm sure you
This
do.
was great, Bev. I really appreciate, I just want to, before I jump into the first question, I appreciate the very specific recommendations.
Okay.
I think when it becomes, I think sometimes for people, for professionals, it becomes so second nature, that, it's like, oh, just use one of the investment platforms, or just use one of the sales tracking platforms. But I really appreciate that you showed us all those different logos and options, because I feel like I'm going to be doing some digging later, finding those links. And yeah, I'll share what I find with people as well in some of the post materials. We did have one question from Alex, who is asking regarding trademarking. They're wondering if you recommend registering an artist name as a trademark early in their career, and if so, which categories would you recommend registering the trademark under?
Okay, so
What categories are there?
That's a lawyer.
Okay. Well, okay. So full disclaimer, this is not legal advice.
This is not legal advice.
Opinion question then.
If you wanted to protect your name, one of the ways that I suggest is to put it into the corporation name, like once you get to that point. Before that, you can go to a trademark lawyer, and I would basically put a logo and then your name right underneath. So that in itself is trademarked, right? So it's a cheaper way of just doing like a word mark all by itself. It's really hard to trademark your born name. You're not allowed to do that. I don't think you're allowed to operate just as your name. I can't really say legally. I wouldn't suggest doing it. But I would suggest maybe making up another name. It's just really difficult to, I think they've changed the laws on all of this, but it's just really difficult to decipher which is what, right? So, you have a bank account, your name is on it. That's what you're performing as. Like what's what? Am I going into your personal account now? Am I going into your operations? So I would suggest putting like productions at the end, like such and such music. That's a way of trademarking it so that you own it. So you could do it, through a corporation, through your business name, or just trademarking it through the trademark office, like I said, with a logo and your name underneath.
Cool.
That
Yeah.
answers.
And I mean, I think that that's general advice also to take away from what you just said, which is, and I'm very guilty of this, but it's like separating yourself into as yourself as a human into your business, and part of that is exactly like creating a business name, registering that business number. In Ontario, to register a business is not, I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's not prohibitively expensive, right? It's $65 or something like that. And then you have a registered business in the province of Ontario. And adding to what Bev has already shared, like for a lot of grant applications, a lot of export opportunities, you really do need something like that in order to qualify. Is it fair? Debatable. This is a weird industry, right? Where it's not necessarily reflective of like where someone is at, but that's the real tea of the situation is that you do want to establish yourself as a business, pretty early on.
I think it also, just to make a note, it's easier for someone else to come into your finances. Right.
Yes.
I really don't want to see what you're doing personally. I mean, I might have to lean over there a little bit, but if it's separate, then it makes you feel better, makes me feel better. It's just a cleaner relationship.
Totally. That's a very good point. Okay, great. We had another question from Claire, who's wondering if you have any Bev more tips on negotiating fees for artists. What's your hot negotiation strategy?
Gosh. What your fees? What do you mean?
Oh,
What your
sorry.
charge?
Like a
Like,
live performance, like just anything. Like
oh,
what's your negotiation style?
I see. Um, a lot of times, again, you should have an agent. I'm not that. But the things that I would look at is where are you performing, how far it is. Like we would do a budget even before you decide to take the gig, because we need to get you there. So that has to be paid for. Who's paying for that? Right. So does that go into the revenue, or are you taking a hit? How many people are going to be there? Right. So that's important. What's the venue capacity? Are they selling tickets? Are they not selling tickets? Are you involved in the selling of tickets? There's a lot of aspects actually that goes into what your fees should be. A lot of the promoters come with their own fees and their own situation. But again, I think from the manager side, we usually create a rider for you. Like it's kind of like a wish list. And I have 3 pots of wish lists. I'm like the cheap wish list, the reasonable wish list, and then the bells and whistles. Give me everything. I want a bottle, I want this, I want that. So I would look at the situation and say, where am I going? Who's paying for this? How am I getting there? And then work backwards and see, am I out of pocket? And I might have to charge some more. You know what I mean? So
That's a good
my
answer. Yeah, if you fully flesh out a budget, then it's your negotiation is based in like real logic and reality. It's as well as your value as an artist, or your art, or if you're representing an artist, as well as their value in terms of where they're at in terms of their performance fees. But yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
tip to actually really project everything through, and then that gives you an honest answer to say that
Yeah.
doesn't align with our budget. What else can we do? Okay, great. We have a question. I don't know if you'll know that. Well, you probably know this. Someone's asking, because grants get taxed as personal income, can I claim expenses that are music related to avoid increased taxation? Do I
Of
have to be
course.
registered as a sole proprietor to do this?
No. You can operate with your name. Like I was saying, I wouldn't try to do that too long. But yeah, you can put it through your personal tax return with some write-offs. Usually when someone's giving you a T4 slip, it would be a T4A. And the A at the end, well, no one knows what it means, but it deciphers itself from the T4 slip. T4 slip, that kind of means there's CPP, EI, taxes off, that's remitted on your behalf to the government. T4A, which you'd get from, or T5, if I'm right, you'd get that from a grant body. That you can write off. You have expenses that I believe once you got the grant, you put in a whole list of expenses of this is what I'm going to do with the money. So yes, the same type of thing applies to your taxes. Whatever you use that money for, you can go above and beyond and spend, right? It's a different calculation, I think, than what you'd be putting in for the grant, but because it's your taxes and it's your whole year of activity. And remember, it's from January to December. So sometimes you'll get a grant in December, but you're not spending it until January. Right? Then we have to do some tax planning at that point. So hopefully you're not in that position, but yeah, I would definitely try to do the matching. There's something called matching principle in accounting. I would match the expenses against the revenue that's coming in that time period. Okay.
All right, thank you. Someone is asking if an artist manager or self-managed artist is approaching you wanting to create their own label as a corporation.
You
What
are
are
your
some
own.
of the
Yeah.
what are some of the
Yeah.
first things that you would tell them to do?
For a label, we'll incorporate. To operate as a label now, it gets a little tricky because remember, you are an individual artist. You're signing yourself to the label. Are you going to be signing other people to the label? And when you do, there's a publishing and writer's side. And how are you going to link, or I'd probably sit with you and figure out how we're going to link the corp to one of those sides or both sides, right? Mainly your publishing side. So if you're a label and you're operating and there's publishing, I would advise that you would link your label name to that. If you're trying to be a label for other people, yeah, that's part of the negotiation, I guess, the contract that you'll be signing with them anyways. And then your name would go down at SOCAN or BMI or ASCAP or wherever that you're registering your music. It would be owned by the corp at that point. So I hope I'm not getting off track. We went label from management to label. But in a sense, if you're self-managed, self-operating, you are label. With CD Baby or DistroKid, you are label. So, but you're an individual label. So it's a little different from having like a lot more people assigned underneath your company, your business.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay. Well, while we're on royalty label publishing corner,
Yeah.
don't worry if you don't know. It's okay. No pressure. I feel like it's like 20 questions for Bev right now. So somebody's asked royalty accounting. So they looked up royalty share, and they appear to only work with independent labels that are distributed by The Orchard, which is Sony. Royalty Zone appears as though they've pivoted to film only. It doesn't see a music option there. So
Oh,
is
they could.
there, do you have What were some other suggestions for
Oh.
royalty accounting for self-released, self-published artists?
You would have to find someone like me to help you with that.
Yeah.
We go back to Excel spreadsheets at this point. Um, or, just to track it. I mean, I have used QuickBooks in the past. I know how to set it up for that, but I'm not really sure why they've moved from music to film. Maybe they'll come back
Mm,
again. But yeah, I've used them in the past, like I said, but I like to do things in Excel. That would be my go-to to get used to the two sides, 50-50, 100%. Music, royalty share. So royalty share, I didn't realize that they only worked with the high level. But that kind of makes sense because there's a lot of more volume. And as an individual, you're not going to have a lot of volume at all, right? You'll probably only have to do your royalties maybe either every quarter or every 6 months or once a year. So, and probably not a lot going on. But if you are looking to sign other people, you're going to have to get yourself proper distribution and just, a proper business manager and a
mhm.
whole team.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a few people in here who are like, "Are you taking on new clients?"
Ah,
So I don't know how you want to answer that, but if you want me to send your email through to people, or if you want to
I,
post a contact info email.
yeah, I have a team. Currently, I am consulting at Six Shooter Records. So I'm taken. But I do have people on my team that are available,
Okay.
that I'm working with and training and whatnot. So yeah, if you want to email me, it's just info@mmmgt.com. Do you want me to put that in there or
Info at MM.
just info? Yeah.
I
And I'll
have
get
it.
one of the guys to get back to you, see what you need and get you a quote or whatnot. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
sounds good.
level you're at. Like I said, I just took on a record label, so I'm not available, but
No
yeah,
problem.
I can talk to you if you need.
I will include that email in the post. I'm going to try to find it while she's answering the next question.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so this is a good question. So I recently collaborated with a group of friends on a
Mhm.
project. We are now completing the project, which was commissioned for a friend who is in the United States for her company. My question is about the royalty for the songs. The content was based on her materials, but the songs are our shared creations. So how do we prepare for this?
Hmm. I gotta read that myself.
Yeah. Oh
That
yeah, I
one
guess
is
you could unshare your screen and then you can see the chat a bit easier.
different. Yeah. Let me unshare stop because let me see here. It was commissioned for a friend. So basically you're both self-employed, like sole proprietors. Yeah, I mean, sharing the royalty of the song, you're just gonna have to use your first name, last name, your artist name, and you would do the divvy up of the music part in SOCAN. But you got to register with a PRO, the song, and then let's see, based upon your materials, the song. How do we prepare for this? I mean, if you both want to go and register a business before you register the songs, that might be a good idea. You know,
Right. Do you
I
think that
mean, for the publishing,
assigning the publishing to two separate companies is a little bit cleaner?
very clean. But again, it's if it's 50-50, then you have to agree on everything. If it's 60-40, then the 60% is really the go-to person. They're not always going to separate the checks. It depends on the situation. I don't know how you were commissioned. I don't know what the contract. So that's one of the first things that I would look at is what's the contract say? And then, how did you present yourself in the contract as an individual, or are you already down there as a business? There's a lot more. I think I have a lot more questions for that person. It's not an easy answer for that one. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions at the moment, anybody?
Just thinking.
Karen, do you want to unmute Karen? maybe I'm gonna, yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I was wondering, for a business manager, sort of how are they paid? Like, is there a percentage or is it like a fee? Like, how does that work?
I do a variety of things. So just as accountants, we kind of work like this, like we kind of look at your full revenue, what's coming in for the year, and can charge anywhere between 7 to 8, 9%, sometimes upwards up to the 10, but I probably wouldn't go past 10. So it's like, it depends. Like if you have a lot of little things I have to do, like then I'm going to charge you per hour. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it might be anywhere between 45 to 55 an hour, depending on what I'm doing. Taxes is a whole different ball of games. But if it's your day to day, and you want your tour reconciled and your manager paid and this paid and that paid, it might be a per hour type of thing. But if it's like you come and visit me once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year,
Mhm.
then I'm going to look at it more so on what's the volume of work, like how much revenue are they bringing in? Because, I don't want to, you can't do accounting all day and I don't want to charge you too much. But yeah, the rule of thumb that I was told is, don't go too low, like below 7% of their total revenues for the year. It's kind of like the ballpark figure of what your accounting department should be costing you.
Okay. Good to know. Thank
Hopefully
you.
that helps.
No, it's good to have an idea. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, I've never heard that. That's really helpful, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I was told when I started this.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
That's reflective of the insanity of the load coming your way. Okay, great.
Yeah, the more numbers, the more problems. So
Yes, more money, more problems. That's
Yeah.
definitely true. Okay, anybody else have any questions at the moment, or how are we all doing out there?
Yeah, I hope I let everyone know what I do. A lot of people think I'm just a manager. So
Yeah,
it's a completely different job, but we go hand in hand. So I really
yeah.
hope I explain that what I do.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think, it's one of those things too where all of this is helpful. There's going to be people on this call who aren't ready yet to hire a business manager.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But it gives a sense of the structure that to be aiming for. Whether you're a manager or you're a self-managed artist or, somewhere in between. Yeah, it's good. It's just good to know. It's like all these things that are really easy to forget about because they're in the background. And
Mhm.
then they come rearing their heads at you. So yeah, so this is a good question here. Somebody's asking, this is a good last question, actually.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. One quick question, and then we're going to do this
Oh,
last question because we are
okay.
coming up on time. So 2 more
Okay.
questions. So we've got,
Okay.
other than like, do you have any suggestions on where people can find business managers to hire?
A good question. That's a hard question because I was trained to do this job specific. I worked for Pro Paz Management. He was the main manager of Dan Hill. We had Lee Aaron. We're going back now. I'm dating myself. In the late 80s. And I came in underneath his management company and I ran the accounting division for those artists. And then he started a record label. Go figure. We started that together, Velvel Records. Again, I was the accounting department for that, as well as his management. And now everything's one big pot. We all have 360 deals. Everyone's a manager at a record label and all of it. And I'm still that type person. The best bet is find who's the best with numbers, who has an accounting head. Not all accountants are made the same. So, some accountants will only specialize in medical, some specialize in the entertainment field. If you want to find one that could do music, I would look at actors and entertainers. Like I've done sports guys, like, baseball, football, basketball. So we have that entertainment mind to kind of wrap around, but like not all of them will take on musicians because of the royalties and it's really complicated. So, you know, I'd start first with a basic accountant and see if they're interested in some of this reconciling merchandise and touring and stuff, because those are a lot of different terms. They may not understand it. So you're going to have to interview them. But yeah, there's a few in the country, but they're very far and few between. And I can't give you all the names. It's like I could count on one hand how many I know. So that just tells you.
It seems like it's a small community of folks, but so anybody on this call, that's a hot tip. If you're good with numbers and you know, maybe you want to get some certifications, and maybe you can become the one that everybody needs to hire as well.
Well, there's also put a note. Some of us go on the road with the bigger bands, right? Because you need somebody on the road with the credit card reconciling as they go, and then they still bring the stuff back to the office like a month later or whatnot. So, you know, you're looking at who's in the industry, who's really good with numbers. There's different types of business managers. Yeah.
And then who's available. Okay.
It's tax season.
Well, I love this question, and it's been upvoted a couple of times. So this is a great cap to all of this. Okay. So I think this is why we all came to this session today, which is, what are some of the biggest mistakes or hiccups that you see often early on in an artist's career that may or may not end up costing them very heavily down the line?
Money-wise? Ooh.
I mean, it's not specific, but let's assume like business money wise, whether it's copyright or publishing
the biggest mistake that I see is the not reporting, right? Not tracking anything. Like, I don't know how people go on their day and not know what they've spent and not know what they've brought in. Yeah, they're just going day to day. The biggest mistake, and you know, I didn't really go into that, but I have to register sometimes the royalties, because I can't collect the money if it's not registered. So, and there's a lot of different PROs to register with. So you may not be up on all that. I would look at MMF's website and resources. I'm sure you guys have a lot of resources to look at where you can register and where the money's coming in. I think the main thing is artists love to spend, or maybe they don't love to spend, but they spend a lot. But they don't understand how the revenue comes in. I think that's the biggest mistake, to be honest, is understanding, where is my revenue coming from? There's all these little areas. And if you don't capture them, you're not going to need me, unfortunately. Yeah.
Totally. That's very common.
Mistake. That and HST. Getting an HST number.
Yeah, let's talk about just as a PS, let's talk about HST.
Really? I don't like HST. No one likes HST. No, but HST is a huge thing. The cool thing is, in this industry, and I'll just give you a tidbit to go off and think about, is a lot of artists don't understand that they don't collect a lot of HST in, right? Royalties don't have HST on it. So think about it. If you're not collecting it in, but you're spending it, that means you're getting a credit. So why not have an HST number, right? It's a headache. You have to keep on top of it. But yeah, you can get a nice little credit at the end of the year. I mean, I would have an annual one if I were a musician, but if you want to have a quarterly one, you could have a quarterly one, but you have to keep on top of your numbers. That is probably, again, the biggest mistake, is not knowing what you made last year, not knowing what you spent last year. Just sit with your numbers, and all of the banks, all of the credit card statements, they all have these drop-down statements that you can do a PDF or an Excel, and you can add everything up pretty easy from there. So not saying you don't need someone like me to help you categorize, but you can do it pretty much yourself and say, where am I? You know, am I profitable? Am I not non-profitable? That is the gray area. Because when I come, the first thing I'm going to ask is, how much did you bring in last year? And a lot of people, well, I thought you were going to calculate that for me. And I'm like, okay. Okay, I guess I'll have to tell you what you made. So, you know, take responsibility, do it yourself just for a little bit, and then get someone like me. And yeah, we'll appreciate each other a lot better.